So I really liked this idea that you found this person doing stitching and they were a little ashamed of it and you encouraged them. Uh, since you are making activist work in the show, and in general, I would say, do you have advice for people who want to make activist artwork? I think that's probably on the minds of a lot of people who don't know how to participate in a lot of the things that are going on in society today. And art just provides this great platform for it. And it's also a little cathartic in the process. So what advice do you have for people who want to start making that work?
Well, it's interesting you call my work activist because I view it that I'm telling my story. I think maybe it has the label activist because some people are uncomfortable with it, which is cool because I'd rather have people either love my work or hate my work.
Mm-hmm.
This is that middle I don't want, indifference. I would say tell your own story, keep it personal, and let others tell their own story. Because I think that if you tell your own experience, it's more powerful rather than telling the experience of other people.
And I have to say, just like one cross stitcher to another, I had never really, I knew it was radical within the space that I was starting to insert my artwork into, but I'd never considered it activist or social practice per se until other people started applying that word to it. And then that gave me this aha moment to understand how my artwork operates outside of my own studio. How does it affect other people? And I feel like work like ours really starts a dialogue between the viewers and the concepts behind it that kind of, activates something in them and makes them feel something, makes them think something. And I think that is probably like the baseline of what starts to constitute activist artwork, to make them aware and to start to think critically about an issue and then maybe even just change their mind. I don't know if I'm being hopeful with that, but yeah.
No, what's interesting, I think part of it is, but I liked how you said activate, because I feel as though now the term activist in some circles has negative connotations, unfortunately. Whereas I just view it as standing up for what's right.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps maybe it was my own baggage why I was shying away from the word activist. That's something for me to think about. That's interesting.
Would you call your work feminist?
I don't know if I'd use that either, because that's not really telling my story.
It can be feminist, and you're working with such a still stereotypically feminine women's craft medium. Like you're just a disruptor within that space, and that's kind of a feminist act to demand that there's more equality within embroidery artwork.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think for me, sometimes other people can make better analysis of what's going on with my work.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I had some pieces in a show and one of the reviewers said, oh, it was something like, you can tell that he is a gay man who came of age in the 1980s because all his work is about death. And I thought, I never thought about that. And so, to get back to that term activist artwork, when I was in school, we had this visiting professor who we had to make a memorial using encaustic. And so the memorial that I made and presented to the class was a memorial to coming of age in the 1980s when AIDS was first coming to be, when I was in my 20s, just kind of not really lost youth, but just kind of a youth of death and despair, I guess. And afterwards, the visiting professor and I had a private conference, and she said, I want to encourage you. She said, you don't want to be known as a gay artist, you just want to be known as an artist. And this really just raised my hackles. But I'm so grateful to her for that, because I thought to myself, this makes her uncomfortable. This is good. I need to do more of this. And so the next project I did in that class was I took an army tent and I lined it with pink lame and I appliqued photos of gay icons on it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of passive aggressive. Well, and actually it was actively aggressive, because in class I said to the class, I said, well, I made this in response to what the teacher said to me. So I don't know if that was actively aggressive or whatever, but But I realized even though it's my story, I feel as though my samplers tell my story even more intimately. It's not like a generalized thing. It's very specific experiences to my life. But I guess it's that was it the personal becomes political? So maybe by reaching in and telling my personal stories, people can identify with the stories, and maybe that gets them to reflect and take action.
Yeah, and that is a feminist tenet. The personal is political. So maybe there's like a hint of feminism in there. As a feminist artist, who I'm totally fine identifying, though, I'm not going to push my own agenda right now. But
No, but
oh, go
that,
ahead.
that's interesting you mentioned that too, because I was thinking about process, and I was looking I have this notebook, and one of my samplers, it's my sampler number 2. It's an ABC sampler, and the text is something like, "Oh, it's when Daddy dresses me in my blue uniform, I become a man," and that I become a man is lifted from Simone de Beauvoir, the Second Sex, where she talks about one is not born a woman, rather one becomes a woman. I'm not sure the exact translation, but
Mhm.
this idea that society places all these things on the woman, and then she becomes a woman because of all these constraints. And so maybe there's a feminist tendency in some of my work.